Good evening, everybody.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Thank you, Baruch Hashem. Okay. So we're gonna start with Gimel. So it says here in the Torah, עשרת ימי בני המן צריך לכתבם כשירה, ולא כשאר שירות שחלק על כתב, אלא מניח חלק בין כתב לכתב, כזה. So what he's saying over here is something interesting, that when you write the 10 sons of Haman in the Megillah, what you got to do is, use the format which is used for songs, right? And if you ever seen a Sefer Torah, how they do that, it's like a different kind of a format. So what he's saying is right but not the usual song format, which is usually like what? Because usually it's like blank space on top of the writing. Rather, he says what you do is, in this case, you leave a blank space between the writing and writing. So he brings all this, right? Parshandata, Vet Dalfon, Vekamar, Yerushalmi, talking about the names of the sons. It says in Yerushalmi, it says, Shehi Pesula Im Lo Asaken. Wow. So in Yerushalmi, it says, if you don't do it like this, it's pasul. Wow. That's incredible. Okay. Another thing he mentions here is that you have to make the vav of the word vaizata, which is one of the names. You have to make it long. Okay, that vav has to be long. Now he brings the okay, so I guess we'll stop there. We'll do the Bet Yosef. So it says Bet Yosef regarding this whole issue. Where is the source for all this? The so Perek Kama Tet, right? It's in the end of the first Perek of Megillah. Tet Zayin Amud Bet. It says over there, Kol hashirot kulan nichtevu ha'ariach al gabe levena. All the other songs, as we said, right? They're done like that. You have blank space on top of writing. Ulvena al gabe ariach, and also the other way around. Chutz mi shirazo, except this one, right? Which is Esther. That's what we're talking about. Also, another one he brings is Umalche Canaan. Also, when he mentions, right, the kings of Canaan in the book of Yoshua, there also there She'ariach al gabi ariach, right? So you're talking about writing on top of writing with a blank space in between. Ulvena al gagme levena. So I guess you could say, right, in English, the best way to describe it is like a right a straight formation, and the other one is like a scattered formation. I don't know. I'm just doing the best I can to translate it into English. So yeah, you could probably find it on the internet, by the way, picture of this, right? You'll see how it looks. Okay. Anyway, if you're interested to see that. My tama shalot he tekuma lemapalatan. So it says, what's the reason why we do it that way, right? Why do we do such a formation like that? So he says, because it's like a symbol that we don't want them to rise from their fall, So in other words, they have no place to rise there. All the spaces are, covered, so there's no place to jump up. Okay. Pirish Rashi explains, Ariachu aktav levina, hu chalak. So says Rashi, right? One is talking about the word ariach means the writing, the written part. Levina means the blank part. That's how you translate these two words. And that's exactly what the Torah said, right? When we read the Torah. So he says that the blank part is double the written part. V'ariach chatzi levena shelo tehem tekuma. So as we said, right, the whole point of doing this is that they shouldn't have a place to rise back up. שלא יהיה להם מקום להרחיב צעדיו תחתיו. So they shouldn't have a place to walk through there, whatever, right? That's what he's saying. כתב הר"ן. So says the Ran regarding this, שיותר נראים דברי רבנו תם. So he says, I'm more supporting the words of Rabbeinu Tam. שכמו שהריח הוא מן הכתב, כמו כן לבנה הוא מן הכתב. So he says, according to Rabbeinu Tam, both these words mean, right, writing, as opposed to Rashi, right, who said that one is writing and one is blank. Rabbeinu Tam says they're both writing, but there's different types. Okay. V'achi perusho says that's how. So how do you explain it according to Rabbeinu Tam? Kol hashirot ariyach al gabei levena. All he says. וקורא השיטה הארוכה לבנה והקצרה אריח. So he says the way the Rabbeinu Tam explains is that the long line is called levena and the short line is called ariach. כן שכתובות בשירת הים, like similar to what it is with the song of the sea, right? Az Yashir. The Shirat, I think we're going to read this week's parsha, right? If I'm not mistaken. The Shalach. Okay, so right, the Shirat Devorah. Also, we have the song of Devorah, which is brought down in the in the book of Shoftim, of Judges. Chutz mishira zo she'ariach al gabe ariach. But this song, right, as we said, is different than those. So how does Rabbeinu Tam explain that? Ve'et shehen tevot ktsarot zo lemala mizo ulvena kore leshemot shem arukot. So he says there are short words and long words. Yeah. So what are the short words? So he says when it comes to the sons of Haman, the word et ve'et, those are like only 3 letters. So one on top of the other. And then you have the longer words, which are the names of the sons, which are, also one on top of the other. So he says, "Ulevena koreh leshemot shem arukim." So he says the names which are long, as we said, right, this is called levena. Vehem gam ken ze lemala mizeh, and each one is right on top of the other. It's piled up, stacked up, Okay, so that's like what I called before, like a straight formation, right? Whatever, whatever you want to call it, whatever. Umay de kamar shelot tekuma lemapelatan, and now what she said, right, that they shouldn't be able to stand up from their from their fall. טעמו של דבר, כשהחומה שווה בשני ראשים ואין בה בליטות, אין להוסיף עליה ולחזקה. So he says when the wall is equal, right, straight, whatever, on the two sides, and there's no protrusions there, אין להוסיף עליה, you shouldn't add to it, ולחזקה, and make it stronger, כמו שהיו יכולים, אם היו שם בליטות, like they were able to do if there was right protrusions there. ושני חומה שאז יוכלו להוסיף על הבניין ולחזקו, because then they could add to the building, right, and strengthen it. כגון זה, שירת הים, same thing, right, it says, when it comes to the song of the sea, מה שאין כן זו שעמוד הצר שלה, not so when, right, when it comes to the shorter column, כל אחד שווה משני צדדיו. Also, each one is equal to, right, from both sides. ושירת האזינו, and he says, what about Hazinu, which is in Devarim, right, at the end of the Chumash? נמי כיוצא בזה, he says, that's all similar. היא שעמודיה שווים. So this is also there, the columns are equal, right, straight. מפני שיש בה מפלתן של רשעים. Why? Because also over there he says it's talking about the downfall of the wicked. כדכתיב, right, as it says over there, ומראש פרעות אויב. Right, so it's talking about the enemy, right? The word oyev means enemy. So you see from there that similar concept over there as well. Okay, well. Good. So goes on. Uchetiv, it's also written, Ki dam avadav yakum. Ikom. It says, right, that the blood of his servants he will avenge, right? What does that mean? That he will avenge the blood that was spilled of the Jews, right? Against their enemies. ונקם ישיב לצריו, ומיהו כל שיטותיה ארוכות. But he says, however, all the lines are long there, כדמוכח במסכת סופרים, like we learn in מסכת סופרים, ולא תקשה לך דאמינן כל השירות כולן אריח. So it says, you shouldn't ask this question that we said, right, that in general, all the songs, they're all ariach on levena, right, which means that according to Rabbi Tan, right, it means that it's like short on top of a long. This is what it means to say, Kol hashirot sheyesh behem ariach ulvena, all the songs which have the long and short, hem niktavot ariach, they're written ariach al gabe levena, right? They're written short on top of long, levena al gabe ariach, or the other way around. Chutz mizil, right? Except this one, shafa pi sheyesh ba ariach ulvena, that even though it has right the both short and long, hem nichtavot ariach al gabe ariach. But when we write it, we do short on top of short and long on top of long. Ulevena al gabe levena. But shirat hazinu, but when it comes to hazinu, en arichin klal. So it says over there, there is no right. What do you call it? Short words. And so therefore, right, it's not relevant there. Interesting. Wow. That kind of shalom. Okay. It would be nice to see pictures of all this diagrams, but it's okay. We'll live. We'll survive. So anyway, right? Katava Mordechai, Yerushalmi, right? It says the Mordechai in Yerushalmi, he brings Yerushalmi by kedin leakev or lemitzvah. So he says, right, that are we talking here about something which is just lechatchila to do this way, or even bediavad, right? If you don't do it, it's like pasul. That's the question. Umasik leakev, and as we said before, right, just a few minutes ago, over there, the conclusion in the Yerushalmi is, if you don't write it this way, it's pasul. Right? That's what we're saying. Okay, good. So that's the bit Yosef. So we'll go to Shulchan Aruch here. Okay. Yeah. So says Shulchan Aruch, very short, right? Concise. It says, "Aseret bnei Haman tzarich lechatvav b'shira." Right. So as we said, that the 10 sons of Haman, you have to write it like a song, right? If you see this, by the way, visually, you'll see that when you're writing a song, what happens is that there's a lot of blank spaces there. It's like very poetic kind of a format. Instead of being like just simple right jargon, whatever. Right? That's what it means. So he says it's not like the other songs, though, right? As we said, right? Not like the other ones. What does that mean? That over there you have blank space on top of writing. Ela maniach chalak ben katav lechtav. So he says, rather, what you do is you leave blank spaces between one writing and the other. Wow. So look what he says, right? So if he doesn't do it that way, it's pasul, just like the Yerushalmi Paskins, right? He passes like the Yerushalmi. Wow. Incredible. So you see, right, that this is like a crucial thing. It's like do or die, You can't do it any other way. So, right, here's the $1 million question, right, for this halakha. Did he paskin here like Rashi or Rabbeinu Tam? If you guys are following, hopefully you'll be able to answer that. Okay, so if not, I'll answer for you.
Rabbeinu Tam, Kavod Harav?
No, he paskins like Rashi.
Also?
Because Rashi exactly said like this, right? That one means blank and one means writing. According to Rabbeinu Tam, they're both writing, but one is short and one is long. Okay.
Okay.
So he's going like Rashi, right? Basically, that's the idea.
Kavod Harav, and what's the measurement of this space?
Which space are you talking about? You're talking about these spaces here that is mentioning here.
Yes. Is it a certain
what it means is that it's like the whole line is blank, like in other words, that part of the line is blank.
And the Chachamim.
So basically it's a blank line, that's what it is, right? That's what it means to say. Yeah, but you know what? Since you're like, you're into the internet pictures, you really should find those, and look at it. Take a look at it.
I
If you
will.
find something good, send it to me also, because I'd like to see it myself as well.
Yes, I'll
Okay.
send it.
Thank you. God bless you. God bless you. Okay. That will be really nice. But it's okay, if you're tired, go to sleep, it's okay.
No, but it's nice to
You
know
can do it,
what.
you can do it tomorrow. It's okay, no big deal. There's no rush, you know what I mean? No rush. No. Don't feel pressured, Yeah.
Thank you.
So God bless. So yeah, whatever, I'm just, I'm not trying to make a big request, whatever. Just, if you find it, if you see it, you happen to see it, send it my way also. Okay. So anyway, right, as we said, this is something crucial, which is really something unusual. For this kind of a thing, I mean, usually these kinds of things are not really so crucial, like what's the big deal if I do it this way or that way, what happened, like what's but that's the way it is. Okay. Anyway, so we'll go on to Dalid.
Kavod Haraf. And the Megillah I sent you, there's spaces in between. Is that the space they're talking about?
Are you talking about the ones you sent before?
Yes.
No, those are just regular, the regular part. But this, a part with the sons of Haman is at the end of the Megillah. You know what I mean? It's a special,
Okay.
it's like at the end. So over there, it's the only place you're gonna find, that format in the Megillah. There's no other place like that.
Okay.
It's an unusual format, It's like a lot of blank space, like it's like it looks like a poem, like a poetry, like something like that, right?
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Thank you.
God bless. Okay. Okay, let's go to Dalid. So as we said, right, that the Torah also told us, right, that when you write the word Vaizata, which is one of the names of the sons of Haman, right, you have to make the vav long. We'll see, right, what they say about that. What's the reason for that, right? There must be a reason why you have to make the vav long. So, right, he says here in Bet Yosef, Gam Zeh Sham, right? It's also there, right, in that Gemara. Vav, the Vaizata, צריך למינתחה בזקיפה. So he says you gotta elongate that vav, right? My tama, so Gemara asks, right, what's the reason? Right, the kulhu bechada zakifa is the kifu. So it says, you know why? Because that symbolizes, right, that they were all hung on the gallows at the same time. All the sons of Haman. So what does that mean, right? That the word the vav is supposed to symbolize the gallows, that they hung the sons of Haman on the gallows. Okay? That's the symbol. Something very funny. I don't know if this is true, by the way. I'm not exactly sure about all the facts, but one time I saw an article, that what do you call it? That when the Nazis lost the war, this World War II. So you know what they did, right? That they also had, I think it was called the Nuremberg trials, where they judged them, the Nazis, whatever, right? So what happened was that, according to this article that I saw, they also hung 10 people there, Same thing. Can you imagine? It was the same thing there, So Amalek, was also over there, right? Just like this was Amalek, also World War II over there, right? They hung 10 people, just like it was in the Sons of Haman. And so it even said in this article something really strange. I don't know if this is true. God knows. Only God knows. But they say, that when they were being hung, these 10 Nazis, so, what do you call it? They one of them screamed out, he says, "This is the Purim spiel, like the Purim story." God knows, I don't know. I don't know if this is true. I don't know. But can you imagine something like this? They hung 10 people there at the Nuremberg trials. Okay, whatever. History, as they say, history repeats itself, you know? Like this. Okay, so anyway, right? Let's go on. The Katav Aran, right? Says the Ran, Yesh lefaresh telav lememra debay leoruche tefe mishar vavin. So he says, you know what? We should explain it like this, you know? It's not coming to tell you to make it longer than all the other vavs, you know? Like, in other words, that wouldn't be proper to do, he's saying. Sharei lo matzinu shenimnet b'mesoret b'otiyot gedolot. So he says, because we don't have a tradition for this, you know, that we should make like a long vav, right? You know, like some kind of a gallows, like we said, right? Ela lifshot rosho kafuf. So he says what it really means is like this, you know, that when you have that right head of the vav, you know, which is like humped over. So he says you straighten it out. Kafuf. So in other words, you make it a little bit taller by, you know, raising its head up, you know, like erect. That's what it means, according to the Ran. So he says, "V'hanu lashon meticha." This is what it means, meticha. Lashon zakuf v'lashon zakifa. Ve'achirim pershu shetzarich le'arich ba b'kriyata. And he says, there's also another opinion, which says that when it says you have to elongate the vav, it means when you read it, right? To read it, you know, to read it in like a prolonged manner. Ve'lo yachtof otav. So what does that mean? Like, don't read it like short, you know, like vaizata, you know, like very fast. So what should you say? Why zata, right? Why zata? Right? Something like that, right? Okay. So then he goes on. So it says, "Ve'arosh katav yesh mefarshim moteach b'kriyata v'yesh mefarshim b'ktivata." Right? Again, same thing. He writes the same thing as the Ran. Some explain this means you have to the way you read it. Some explains it means the way it, you know, it stands, right? The taller. So he says it's one of the big letters, Adkan. So he seems to disagree with the Ran, right? Because the Ran said it's not really a big letter, right? Just a little bit, you know, you raise the head a little bit. But according to the Rosh, it seems like you really have to make this letter big. And by the way, I think the custom is like the Rosh, you know, because when I see the Begilot, usually the Vav is like a giant, you know, giant Vav there. If I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like a really giant Vav. It's like the gallows, you know? Okay. Good. ויש מפרשים בכתיבתה. Good. וזה לשון אורחות חיים. So this is what אורחות חיים says. פירש הרעה, the רעה explains, צריך למין תכה לזקוף ראשו. Again, right, he says like the Ran, that you just have to raise the head. הכפוף וכל המעריכו אינו אלא טועה. It says, but if you make it longer than that, he says, you're mistaken. לפי שלא מצינו וו זה בתוך אותיות גדולות. So he says, because we don't find with the right tradition that, you know, this vav becomes so large. So he's going like the Ran, right? And not like the Rosh. Okay, interesting. So then he brings here the Yerushalmi, right? He brings the Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi, Amar Rabbi Yosef. Says Rabbi Yosef, Barbon, right? This rabbi. צריך שיהיה איש בראש דפה ואת בסופה. So he said the word ish, right, has to be at the beginning of the page. Right? What does that mean, ish? Ish Yehudi, it says, right? The Jewish guy, right? Who was the Jewish guy? Mordechai, right? That's what we're talking about. And the word says, and he says the et, right? That et, right, which is talking probably about the sons of Haman. At the end, Aset, right? Besofa, Aset, Besof Dapa, right? So that has to be at the end. The word Aseret, right? The 10 sons of Haman, right? The 10 sons of Aseret, yeah. The Perek Bnei Ha'ir. So he says, right, in this Perek, in the Katav, the Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, it says over there, right, in this Sefer Mitzvot, which is called Samag, right? פירש רש"י, כזה איש ואת פרשנדתה ואת טלפון ואת אספתא ואת פורתה ואת עדליה ואת ארידתה, ואת פרמשתה, ואת אריסאי, ואת ארידאי, ואת וייזתה, aseret, right? That's how you write, that's how it goes, right? This whole thing. ומדקדק בלשון, so he says, he makes a deduction here, ואת בסופה, that when it says, right, that it should be at the end, the word et, al kochenu besof hashita רוצה, it means that talking about the end of the line, רוצה לומר, he wants to say, shein besof hadaf, because if you're going to tell me, it's telling me that's at the end of the page, but we already said, right, that the word aseret should be on the end of the page. Ela berosh shita, so it means, right, that's the end of it. It means like this, right? How do you make the whole definition? Right, in the beginning of the line, right, should be there. בסוף שיטה רוצה לומר עד כאן לשונו וכן נהגו. So let's read that one more time. I didn't catch that. אמינן שעשרת בסוף דפה. Right. So we said, right, that the word aseret, which means 10, right, 10 sons, is going to be end of the page, right? So what does that mean? It says, rather, it should be at, it's talking about the line, right, and not the page, when it comes to the word et. Okay, good. Let's go on. מה שכתב בירושלמי, right, and now what you said, right, that the Yerushalmi, Shenitz, Venachitz, Vekehadin, Kantira. Oh. So we didn't read this tour, so I'm going to go back there and read this. Looks like we missed something in the tour. Right, so it says like this. Yerushalmi, Amar Rabbi Yosef Barbon, Tzarich Sheyeh Ish Beresh Dara. We already said this. We said that. And then it says, right, so it says, Shnitz Venachitz Kiadin Kantira, Nikret Sefer, Shem Tafra Bechute Pishtan, Pesula. Right, so it says, since it's called the Sefer, the Megillah, right? It's called a Sefer, which is a book. In those days, by the way, a book meant it was a scroll, right? That's what it meant. Nowadays, we call the book something else, right? Paperback, whatever, right? Or hardcover. In those days, Sefer meant a scroll. So he says, therefore, since it's called a Sefer, right? Therefore, if you tie it up, right? You know the pages, right? You bind them, right? Binding them with, and you're using strings which are made out of flax, right? Yeah, psula, it's pasul. Nikret igeret. It's also called the letter, right? And there's another place where it's called a letter. Shem hitil ba gimel chutet gidim kshera. So therefore, if he put three strings made out of sinews, it's kosher, because that's the way the Sefer Torah is done. Vivad sheyu beshudashim, but it says they have to be equidistant, right? The sinews have to be, right. The binding has to be equal distance. Vivad sheyu meshudashim meshum sheyesh bo perushim shonim, because there are several kinds of explanations there, definitions. Tzarich letzet yedei kulam. So it says therefore you have to fulfill all of them, right? If you can, right, to fulfill all these conditions. Lasot echad berosh ha'iriyah. So what does that mean? The first binding should be right at the top of the page. The echad be'emtzayato, and one should be in the middle. That's the way you do it, right? The echad besofo, and one in the end. The echad בחלק הרביעי. מכאן באחד בחלק הרביעי, מכאן, yeah, so what is he saying here? I think this is already something else. Let's see the, Bet Yosef. So it says Bet Yosef regarding this Yerushalmi we just saw. So it says Bet Yosef, Nireh de Shanitz hu milashon shnatzim. כלומר, כן, שנצים שעושים לכיס, שאחד מהשנצים בולט מצד זה, ואחד בולט מצד שני, כך איש ברש דפה, ועת כנגדו בסוף אותה שיטה, והצריך לממר האחי, כדי שלא תטעה לפרש ועת בסופה, בסוף, right? So he says, this whole thing about this word schnitz, right? By the way, this is not schnitzel. We're not talking about chickens over here. Right? So it's not schnitzel, it's schnitz. So it says schnitz means, right, that you have these schnatzim, right, which are like some kind of fasteners, something like that, right? That they make for a purse, to fasten it closed, whatever. So one side sticks out and the other side sticks out, right? They protrude, right? So it's the same thing, that you have the word ish, right, at the beginning of the page, and then the et kenegdo besof ota shita. At the end of that line, you have the word et, right, which is talking about, as we said, right, the sons of Haman. So it says you have to say like that. There's no other way to explain it. You shouldn't err. Lefaresh the et besofa, that right, besof dapa. You shouldn't say that the word et should be at the end of the page. That's not talking about the end of the page. It's talking about the end of the line. Kamar. Umishum hachi kativ shnitz lelamed delav besof dapa kamar. So therefore he says that's why he gave you this illusion, with the word schnitz, right? Which is like a fastener. Okay, yeah. So anyway, ela besof shita de'ainu ken shnitz kedepishit. Okay, so we got that. And then he goes on. Umash katav v'nachitz v'keadim kentira. So he says, what does this mean, right? What he wrote in the Yerushalmi, these words. He wants to say, shaveh mishnet tzadim means it's equal from both sides, right? In other words, it's like even, right? Kimo binyan shaveh, right? Like a building, right? Which is like, smooth, right? And right? Even. Shemashtichin mashkonat binyan. So what does that mean? If you throw down, that, what do they call that? The plumb line, whatever they call that, right? It's going to be straight. Right, Mirosha Lasofat, the top to bottom. He shava kol kach tevot shel shemot aset bnei Haman. So he says, same thing with the sons of Haman, as we said, right? They should be equal. Like, no protrusions, as we said, right? Hem zo galgav zo beli shum belita. V'zeh keperush Rabbeinu Tam. So that comes out like Rabbeinu Tam, right? What does that mean? That he said, right, that when we're talking about this format of the song, right, we're talking about long and short, not writing in blank, right, like Rashi explained, right, as we said, right. Okay, so but as we said, right, Maran the Shulchan Aruch doesn't paskin this way, right? So whatever, right? Take it as it is, right? Take it with a grain of salt, as they say, right? Okay, so vina al gabe bina umatzati katuv v'nachitz perush lashon chiluk. So he says, I found, I guess he had a dictionary, like we have. So he says, I found in some book, right, that the dictionary, whatever, that the word nachitz, right, the definition is, right, lashon chiluk, right, means like separation. V'hu anechelak v'nechetza lebet hachatzayin. So separated into two halves, right? Kantira, what does the word kantira mean? Perush hu kemo mateh v'shevet, right? That's some kind of a rod, right? Shel barzel, which is made out of metal. Shehu shel banaim, and the builders use it, right? There's a name for that in English, right? So those rods, that they use for building. God knows what they're called. I don't know. Anyway, lachtok bo et kotel, right? So what you do is, right? Oh, I see. It says they use that to cut the wall. Oh, okay, like some kind of a saw, maybe. I don't know. Whatever it is, yeah, something like that. V'chen piresh ba'aruch. Also an Aruch explains like that. Aruch is like an ancient dictionary, by the way, right? Written about 1,000 years ago, right? Okay, it's like a Talmudic, dictionary or whatever. Also in the Midrashim as well. Aramaic. Right? So So he says, "Ubiur enyan sheshirat bnei Aman." So he says, the explanation is like this: that regarding the song, right, as we call it, right, of the sons of Haman, ve'et, right, all these short words, et, mitzad echad, one side, right, all the short words are on one side, ve'ashemot mitzad acher, and as we said, right, the names of the sons are all on the other side because they're longer. That's the way it's formatted. Okay, elu keneged elu, right, the one corresponding to the other, vezeu kavanat ha'ma'amar shanitz v'chnachitz, right, so it says this is the meaning of this Yerushalmi, right, that we just discussed, right? Can you imagine, understanding Yerushalmi sometimes can be a big hassle, right? Not so easy to understand, all these words there. Right? So he says, just like those fasteners that are, on the purse, that we made from one side to the other, and then we stick some kind of a strap inside there, right, to tie it up, to fasten it. And then you tie it up like that, right? By pulling it. Also these words, et ve'et, mikan, mikan. Same as we said, right? The names on the other side. Like these fasteners. So he says, this song is divided up into two parts, right? Two sections. Right? In other words, you got two sides going on, right? The short side and the long side. Kimo a shevet shel benayin, right? Like he says, like that rod which is used by the builders, right? The architects, whatever, right? Achotech at the kotel, which I'm sorry, it's like a saw, right? That cuts the that cuts the wall. The kanu kan, okay, ad kan, okay, good. So so we'll do the Shulchan Aruch. We'll stop here. This was a big one. Okay. So Shulchan Aruch tzarich le'arich bevav b'vaizata, right? As we said, right? First of all, you got to make the vav of vaizata long. So here in the parentheses, he brings the two definitions which we saw in the Beit Yosef, right? Because one of them means that you read it long, right? Like in other words, you elongate the reading, you stretch it out, right? But according to the more accepted opinion, we're talking about it has to be, right, elongated physically, right? Like a gallows, as we said, right? It symbolizes the gallows that they were hung on, right? The 10 sons of Haman, right? The Nuremberg trials, as I told you, right? All that stuff. So, right? Yeah. So, I got וצריך לכתוב איש בראש דפה, ואת בשפה, right? And also, is that you have to, when you write that page, right, with this song on it, you got to do the beginning of the page, the word ish, right, which means the man, right, and dapa, and the word et, right, be'et, it's going to be at the end of that line, right, so that's the way it's got to be shaped. So it's a very specific format, right, that page. It's a very specific. It's doesn't look like the rest of the Megillah. You know what I mean? Which is like, just the, the standard format of any other book. Okay, very good. So I guess we'll stop here. Thanks for coming tonight. Be blessed with wealth, health, happiness. You should have only happy days like Purim, Bezat Hashem, all your life. Amen ve'amen. Chazak u'baruch. We'll see you tomorrow, Bezat Hashem. It's not Shabbat, is it? Oh my God. Too early. Okay.
Thank you so much.
God bless. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow, Bezat Hashem. All the best.
Thank you.